Hello YouTube, this is an Ace Special, and today I'm going to be talking about the tactical shooter genre of games. Before that though, I do owe you guys an explanation as to why I've had so few videos recently. The truth is that I've had hardware issues with my laptop, to the point that I have had to get the screen replaced on it. This wouldn't be such an issue itself normally, but the repair shop was having a very hard time getting the right parts, and that meant that it took a very long time to finally get it working properly. There is one perk to this though, and that is the fact that the new screen has 1080 support, so you guys can now start watching my videos in full 1080 resolution. Aside from that though, I'm sure you've noticed the new intro that I've added. I should point out that the music on it is the boss battle music from Super NES Classic known as STG Strike Gunner, which was a favorite of mine growing up. I should say that if you have a Super Nintendo or a modern retro system that can play Super NES games, you may want to consider this title for some good old-fashioned nostalgia. Okay, back to the video and tactical shooters. The tactical shooter is a subgenre of FPS that is quite unlike your typical cover-based shooter like Call of Duty, Halo, or Gears of War. Not that you would know it by the aesthetics of the game. Nah, the true nature of and difference between tactical shooters and cover-based shooters lie in the details of gameplay mechanics. What is different in tactical shooters is that they are all about making the player feel vulnerable and cautious. Unlike cover-based shooters, you simply cannot afford to get shot in a tactical shooter, as you can and will die in 1 or 2 hits. In addition, you do not have regenerating health, and most tactical shooters don't even have health bars or medkits either. Another thing I should add is that the level designs tend to be entirely different, with open, choose-your-own-path levels rather than linear corridors and hallways. Even the multiplayer tends to be very different from cover-based shooters, as co-op and PvE tends to be the major selling point for a tactical shooter, even over competitive PvP. Now, if you're unfamiliar with this type of game and have only played cover-based shooters, or tend to suck at cover-based shooters, most of what I have just said will likely sound very grim and foreboding. I mean, you get shot all the time in Call of Duty, and it's very frustrating, if anything. How can tactical shooters be fun then? Well, the truth of the matter is that tactical shooters are simply fun to play. First of all, a good tactical shooter uses these things to its favor. The vulnerability of your character is used to build a sense of tension as you play. Even the most basic enemy punk is a serious threat, meaning that you have to treat tactical shooter games with more than just a shred of seriousness. It also means that beating the levels feels far more rewarding and fulfilling than your typical cover-based shooter. This is added to by the fact that many tactical shooters also have permadeath and skill systems in place for the characters that the player uses throughout the campaign. At this point, some of the younger viewers may be asking why they haven't heard of tactical shooters before. Well, the reason is that tactical shooters are in truth a rare breed these days. They were very popular around the late 90s and early 2000s, but there have been very few made since around 2006. While we continue to have Ghost Recon and Rainbow Six games, these games are not true tactical shooters anymore. You could make all kinds of arguments about why this is the case, but for me it would seem that this is occurring because it is easier to market cover-based shooter games like Call of Duty and Halo than it is to market true tactical shooters. It may seem odd, but no matter how good tactical shooters are, the moment you mention the fact that you can die in 1 or 2 hits and have no way of replenishing health tends to turn most gamers off these days, or at the very least it is very difficult to explain how this can be fun. In addition, I would argue that some of the professional game critics would heavily penalize games for not being mainstream enough. And let's not forget that the Rainbow Six games franchise in particular was heavily criticized after Rainbow Six Lockdown was released, until they chose to release the Vegas games, that is, which were cover-based shooters at heart. Another thing to mention that goes along with this is that tactical shooters also have a reputation for having rough edges. As much as gamers loved the old Rainbow Six games, even they had the occasional hiccup with AI design. The thing is, tactical shooters have never completely died out though, as the Red Orchestra series is a tactical shooter series. If a bit of an unusual tactical shooter, you could also make the kind of argument that Arma is a tactical shooter, although it better fits under the closely related military sim genre. I should also mention that modders have been very active and have taken it upon themselves to convert games into tactical shooters. Battlefield 2, for example, is not a tactical shooter, but the Project Reality mod for it is. I should also mention that the Project Reality mod has actually gone standalone, which means that you can pick it up separately for free. And the team that made that mod are also working on a new tactical shooter called Squad, which I'm looking forward to myself. So all in all, tactical shooters is a genre that needs to be more known, and I would say that it needs to make a comeback. In this day and age where we have games that keep playing like the same, a change of this sort would be a breath of fresh air that I'm sure a lot of gamers need at this point. Maybe I'm mistaken on this, though. Tell me what you guys think about this then, but this is pretty much all I have to say. Hope hear you guys again soon. Ace out.